Calculating child support in Texas is more complicated than you think. Listen up. If you're trying to reach an agreement with your spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse on how much child support should be, whether you're the person who's going to be paying or the person who's going to be receiving the child support, you really need to talk to an attorney about what all of the ins and outs in Texas are concerning child support before you make a decision on how much you're willing to pay or how much you're willing to accept. It's not as easy as you think. My name is Laura Hurd, and I'm an attorney who's been practicing family law in San Antonio, Texas since 1987. You may have heard that child support is 20% of your net income if you have one child, or 25% of your net income if you have two children. But that's not entirely accurate, because there are lots of exceptions and considerations and modifications that get thrown into that formula. If you're going to know what a judge would probably order before you get to court, you need to consider a lot of other things. For example, do you know how much the income really is? Because income is not just your salary that you get from your employer. It can include your investment income and your rental income and other forms of income. So you need to have documentation of the tax returns, the 1099s and W-2s, as well as any investment paperwork that shows how much the income really is. It all gets added in together, not just the take-home pay. And when it comes to take-home pay, that's not the same thing as your net income. When you're calculating 20% of net income, it's not your take-home pay from your pay stub, because your pay stub will include lots of deductions that we don't consider in child support, such as it may have a deduction for 401k or for a loan that you have that is being deducted directly from your paycheck. Those things don't count. Where we get your net pay is a formula that gets calculated from the family code. And basically, it just takes out your federal income tax from the gross pay. So we start with gross pay. We take out what the chart says to take out from the family code, which is Social Security and state income tax, federal income tax. And that's where your net pay is. And that brings up something. We don't have a state income tax in Texas right now, but if your employer is working outside the state of Texas, if they are living in another state that does have state income tax, well, that does get deducted from the paycheck. So when you run it through the chart, it's not just what the chart says. We also have to consider if there's state income tax in the other state. There's other deductions as well. Most commonly would be if your person who's paying the child support is also paying for premiums for health insurance through their employer. Now, you get to deduct the insurance that is attributable just to the children. So it's not how much is taken out of your paycheck for health insurance, if that includes health insurance for yourself or your spouse. And guess what? Health insurance companies, they don't tell you how much it is just for the children. Generally, you can't insure just your children and not yourself through your employer. So we have to do another calculation. We take the amount of your insurance premium if it was just you or you and your spouse, and the amount of the insurance premium for the whole family, and subtract you and your spouse from the whole family to get how much of that is attributable to the children. Now, 20%, that can also change. 20% for one child, well, that's only if you don't have other children that you're obligated to pay support for. If you have other children outside this marriage or outside this relationship that you have a child support order and you're obligated to pay child support on, that changes the whole percentage. It reduces the percentage. If you have a very low income, that changes the percentage as well. If you have a very high income, there's a cap on how much child support would be. So we get to a certain amount of net income and it doesn't go any higher for net income unless you can prove that the child needs more than that. So you see, the percentage, 20% for one child, can be completely different depending on your situation. And if you are a high income earner, or even if you're not, the judge always has discretion to increase the standard child support upwards based on proven needs of the child, especially if a child has special needs. So we look at things like if you pay union dues, we look at how much you're paying for child support, we look at all of your income, we look at whether you have other kids, we look at a lot of different factors, the level of your income based on your gross income, and then we can calculate what the child support should be after we decide what the true percentage should be. As you see, you really need to discuss with an attorney. If you're the person paying child support, you don't want to pay too much because you're not getting credit for the health insurance or the union dues or the out-of-state income tax. If you are the person receiving child support, you want to make sure that you're getting as much as you're really entitled to, and that includes income from other sources, and make sure that you've got the right percentage, and if you can prove that you need more than standard child support. So all these factors really need to be discussed in detail before you decide how much you're willing to pay or how much you're willing to accept for child support. If you'd like to discuss this further about your particular situation with your documentation and your specific details, give me a call.